So good morning and welcome to Wake Up to Working From Home, our weekly check-in on all things WFH. I'm Barry Ennis, and today Polly and I are very chuffed indeed, to welcome the gorgeous Kim Morgan, CEO of Barefoot Coaching, and all-round queen of personal and professional growth. Kim, good morning. Hello. Thank you for coming.
Good morning, Barry. I'm very chuffed too.
Thank you so much. So as we begin week 6 of physical distancing, we're today going to discuss the realities of how we're feeling collectively and individually around the freedoms, people, places and experience we have lost during this process. And with a reported death toll of over 20,000 in the UK, how can we make meaning from such abstract numbers and the impact on us personally? And how do we handle anxiety when loss is displayed as data on a graph night after night? I'd just like to say personally that I'm in a very fortunate position to have not experienced any personal tragedy during this period. And I think that's the same for you, Polly. Yeah. Is that right? Yeah. But we are mindful, obviously, that others might. However, this morning, as ever, we intend to keep the conversation positive and productive, not to discount any difficult emotions, but simply to bring them into our awareness and in a way that is healthy, helpful and true. And we couldn't think of a better person to guide us through such difficult territory than the wonderful Kim, who I know most of you will know, and if you don't, you soon will. So, Kim, hello. First of all, tell us about how it's been going for you kind of holistically from a sort of business owner perspective, a woman, a human being. Like, what have the challenges been?
Yeah, so I've been really thinking about this. And I think as a person, my age, which I don't normally like to talk about too much, but I'm in my mid-60s now, and age is doing me a favour for once.
Okay.
And age gives you, life experience and knocks and losses. And I think the older you get, the more you've experienced losses. So from my perspective, I've experienced quite a lot of tragic losses in my life. And I've had to sort of really face into uncertainty and come to the realisation that blooming life is just uncertain and you never know what's around the corner. So I think from a personal perspective, I'm doing pretty okay.
Okay, good.
From a business perspective, it's been a massive shock.
Right.
And that was one thing that I wasn't expecting. So I might have been expecting to sort of fall down the stairs one day or something happen to me, but I wasn't expecting something to happen to the business. So that has thrown me into a bit of a spin, not just a pivot, but a somersault. Call it what you will, and that has kind of brought about for me financial concerns. I suffer from a sort of overdone sense of guilt and responsibility for the whole world.
Yeah.
I feel really responsible for the people who work for me, employed or on a contractual basis. So that's been really tough.
You've always been that person that's held this community so close to you, haven't you? And I think that's one of the big pluses whenever we talk to people that are in the Barefoot family, as it's called. There's this sense that you are up there. And so, I can only imagine what collective responsibility you must be feeling in this uncertainty.
I'm really struggling. I always have therapy, and my current therapist always reminds me that I'm not general manager of the universe, and that has become my mantra, because I can spiral into, oh my goodness, Barefoot has now trained 3,500-4,000 people to be coaches, and it's all my fault if they have.
We all want jobs and we all want them from you. Come on, it's all your fault.
The pressure. So, kind of having a bit of a mantra, getting perspective from time to time is helpful. So is taking action and looking at what can I be doing differently? What haven't I thought of? how can I move the business in a different direction?
Polly, we've been having the same kind of conversations, haven't we? I mean, I guess it's part of why this is here and why we're doing this, is this notion of what can we do and finding meaning in this madness. How's it been at home for you with everything going on?
Well, I think my biggest loss that I'm facing is spontaneity, and that's something I hold as one of the most important things for me, is the ability to be spontaneous. And I've always really shied away from structure, and I'm kind of in an enforced structure now. And I suppose the other big challenge is around anxiety and my children, or there is, I think all of us have a huge sense of anxiety or loss, whether we're conscious of it or not at this time. So that's where I'm even with my job, I'm finding it really hard to know. It's really hard to relate these things to your own family. With my clients, it would feel quite different, but with my kids feeling anxious, that's difficult. But I suppose, as a bit like Kim was saying, there's a sort of gratefulness around that it's not as bad as it could be, and a sense that we're all healthy, physically healthy. So that's a real, I do remember that a lot. But yeah, I think that's how.
Yeah, we were talking about looking for silver linings, or just noticing the silver linings that emerge, and yeah, in a way, I feel like, for me anyway, I've not had to search for those silver linings in quite the same way as I've had done before. They do just seem to be appearing, which is a nice feeling. But again, I'm sure that's not the same for everybody. I just noticed this morning, Bojo has said, something about us carrying on in this level of uncertainty, that we're obviously not going to be reducing lockdown measures. And I just wonder what that does to the pulse of us all, of, okay, we're in it for another period of time and it's kind of unending. And yeah, Kim, I guess I wanted to pick your brains, really. I mean, it was so delight to have you here for this moment in time, but how we can create, how can we hold uncertainty and okayness? How do we manage both?
Yeah, it's a kind of existential challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the existential therapy, about which I know very little, but I've dipped my toe in it, and Buddhism, the same, about which I know very little, but I've dipped my toe in it. That's the sort of core fundamental principle, that life is uncertain, and we need to hold both uncertainty and certainty lightly. And it's hard to do, but sort of live in the question. I remember a few years ago, I saw a guy called Ernesto Spinelli, who's an existential therapist, who's a really kind of like powerful figure. And he talked about, what's so great about certainty after all. It was a nice challenge. And he said, if you're certain every day when you go out of the house, you don't bother to kiss your partner goodbye. You don't bother to say, have a nice day. You just think, yeah, I'm certain that I'm coming back tonight, and I'm certain that he or she will be there. But actually, if you hold uncertainty lightly, you'll always stop and kiss them, tell them that you love them, and look forward to coming back.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the author, but there's The Power of Now, and it really does bring you into the present moment in a way that we've been sort of cognifying for the last 15, 20 years, of trying to get in the here and now, doing all these apps and meditations and everything. And we've got this opportunity now to just be in the here and now.
It's a kind of slap round the face, isn't it? Like, you don't know what's coming. And I think it is an opportunity for us to embrace that. I said earlier that I've experienced a lot of loss, and one of those losses, and most people who know me well know that the most tragic loss was the loss of my daughter when she was just 28. And I remember we went to Barbados on a sort of girls' trip when she only had a few weeks left to live, and we were met by the palliative care team from Barbados. they were so different from the sort of clinical people that we'd met in the UK. They mostly consisted of elderly women wearing hats and carrying rum and cake.
Amazing. That's the kind of palliative care I want.
It was amazing. And they just kept saying, like, we were all sitting going, oh, how long has my daughter got? And she was going, how long? And they were like, why are you doing this? You're all here. You're all here. And they looked at me and said, you could die before her. None of us know. And it was really challenging, really challenging. And at the time I was a bit angry because I was like, don't you realise? But actually that kind of in the moment thinking is all we can really do, because we can't predict what's going to happen ever. And sorry, this has gone a bit serious, hasn't it, Barry?
Well, we were talking before, Polly and I, about, you know, our kind of Ant and Dec, or maybe a bit more Bob Carroll, G's and Spit kind of routine that we do, and how that sits with a subject like this, whilst, you know, holding it with respect. And quite rightly, you know, you challenged us when we were chatting before about how relevant this is and how bringing it into the light is useful.
Absolutely. And I trained as a psychotherapist. I trained as a Freudian psychotherapist originally. I rejected it sort of 30 plus years ago because I felt too focused on pain. I moved into coaching, and I guess I've spent a whole, sorry, I'll just kind of close that. I guess I have spent my whole career kind of going between those two ends of the spectrum, and trying to come to that sort of golden mean point.
Yeah.
I acknowledge painful feelings and also move towards sort of positive solutions to them. But right at the moment, I think that feelings need to be acknowledged and solutions don't necessarily need to be found. Sorry, can you hear?
Just say, Kim's not got somebody locked up in a box in her room. She's got builders next door, so she says. Release the Kim.
Everyone's got builders in at the moment. My neighbour has this morning. So yeah, I think grief is not a problem to be solved, and so there's something wonderful about the personal development industry that I have contributed to for many years, but equally there's something potentially dismissive about it right now. You know, that idea that we can think ourselves out of this, that idea that we can immediately make ourselves feel better, when actually grief and loss are normal and natural reactions to this kind of situation.
Yeah, I've talked a lot, I think, about my fire pit, and the sort of life it's given me. But this is well, get over it. In the burning of the wood is loss, and is endings, and it's coming to it's having a process that allows you to appreciate the life in the wood for me. So there's the fire and the warmth and the joy, but that comes to an end. And I think quite regularly now I'm just kind of facing it in a way that isn't this continuum, this projection through life that just keeps going to the next thing, that I'm starting to kind of face up to endings. Things will end, so make the most of it.
Yeah, I love that, Barry. Love that idea. And I wanted to say, one of the grief methods that I've trained in is called the grief recovery method, and they have really a lovely definition of grief, because grief is not just about the death of a loved one. Grief is the normal and natural emotional reaction to a loss or a change of any kind. And it's also the normal and natural reaction to the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behaviour or circumstances. And at the moment, that, you know, that can be family, home set up, the way, you know, the rituals that we have, the community we have around us, our status, our health, our finances, our career, our identity are all being impacted at the moment. So why wouldn't we be feeling all that blooming sea?
Yeah.
Kim, I find that is really comforting to discuss with people because I don't think people are really considering this to be a feeling of grief, but I agree with you, and I've learned from you that it definitely is. But because people aren't realizing that it hits us like grief hits us. So in the most unlikely situations, so you could be in Sainsbury's and suddenly find yourself breaking down, or, you know, cooking dinner, or even laughing and then suddenly crying. It really is grief that we're feeling. But I think because people aren't naming that or understanding that, people feel a bit like they're going completely mad at the moment. And I think the more that we can sort of explain that it is a huge loss that we're all experiencing, and different losses for different people, but that it's okay, and to understand that, I think it's really helpful.
It's so true, Polly. One of my favourite definitions of grief, it's sad when you've got actual definitions of grief and have a favourite one, isn't it? But is that grief is like glitter. You know, if you've ever even had a Christmas card with glitter, and then like months later, you're like, oh, it's still here on this table, or what's that on my hand?
Back to my face, yeah.
It catches you out and it keeps coming. And for me, the people who are grieving just need to be listened to, and that end needs to be explained, acknowledged, to somebody else, to ourselves and to others.
I keep getting the giggles thinking of that person locked in the box.
See, there's a reason why they've got the builders in. It allows us to laugh right after a really profound statement like that.
Exactly.
I'm also... Go on, Polly.
A message from Dan, who's just saying, shies away from structure. It sounds just like me. He's struggling without serendipitous moments in his interactions right now.
Yeah, it's funny. We went yesterday, and you know, we shouldn't have. Me and Rob went to see his brother because we've got a new nephew who was born actually on the 1st of January. So we've seen him, but we haven't seen a lot of him. And we arranged this responsibly socially distant walk in the park, and I could feel my urge to just want to go over and hug and to pick up, and it was that spontaneity of like, oh, was this a good thing to do? Because now I'm really having to confront the loss of this contact that I love to have. But of course, again, it was still great to see them. So yeah, and again, Polly, we've talked about creativity and the fact that you can't just go and do whatever you want to do, that it needs to be routine. And people keep talking about routine as the way through this, and I don't know if that's the only way. I actually am quite routine, as you both know, but I'm really enjoying less routine, much less routine. Waking up when I wake up, eating when I want to eat, always, and just generally going with stuff. It's an opportunity to experience less routine.
Yeah, and I think there are two statements that are in my mind at the moment. I read something on Facebook, this thing on Facebook, and I really liked it. It said, we're not all in the same boat. So we're all in the same situation, loosely, but we're not all in the same boat. And we're not even in the same boat ourselves, are we, all the time? And the other one that's like that is something from Irvin Yalom, who is another existential psychotherapist who I like. And he says there's always one stimulus and many reactions. So I kind of react against the, find structure, find routine, do art, do journaling, because, and this is where I think coaching really can come in, to just stop and ask people, what do you think would be a useful thing for you to do now? And one day it might be structure, another day it might be just like lie on the floor eating as much food as you can in your pajamas all day long. And it's about you having control over those choices rather than feeling like, oh gosh, I've got to have structure, you know.
Yeah.
Every response to this loss, every response to any loss is absolutely unique, and that has to be honoured.
I just want to say quickly that the references that you are sharing with us, that I'll pick up and share with everybody that's registered today, so that we can get the right kind of spellings and all that out. So I just wanted to say that. We put a poll out, Kim. I should have told you this. You may have seen it, but just really loose questions. And I think some of it adds a bit of colour to what you're saying, in that I asked, have you been personally affected by loss due to the C word? We try not to say the word. And 88% haven't. And I think that explains why we've got this bizarre detachment or guilt of not feeling stuff or feeling stuff, because normally when there is loss like this, there is a profound moment in time where it happens. And then there may be another moment in time where we acknowledge that it's happened, you know, whether that's, you know, a death or a funeral or something like that. And here there's just this fog of loss continually. Like I say, the 20,000 and the bar charts and all that, I know they try and add humanity by saying sadly, but it still feels a bit, you know, I think back to 9/11, where 3,000 people died in a day, and it was massive news for about 10 years. And we've lost 20,000 people in a month. We've got used to that, have we? I don't know.
Is there just something about our brains can't compute that? And what would happen to us if we do?
Yeah, well, my brain isn't computing.
It feels like a real failing in my brain to me that I can't think that. And there's a kind of, I'm aware of a sort of selfishness. I've definitely got it, and I've noticed other people where people are just kind of safely in their family unit with the door closed, and it's a bit like, God, as long as we're okay. And then you occasionally reach out and check other friends and family are okay, but there is a real sort of protective thing that seems to have happened. And I know that I've just totally detached from the figures and the numbers, and it doesn't feel real to me. But I don't think I can go. I just don't think my brain is actually capable of understanding those numbers. You know, I saw at the weekend, it's like the whole of the O2 at full capacity, and that, you know, even sitting in there, I can't ever believe that's 20,000 people, let alone that number of people have died in the UK. I don't know, Kim, is there an answer in your experience, you know?
I think probably it's a natural sort of psychological emotional survival mechanism. I really notice how often people say in response to somebody experiencing a tragic loss, I can't imagine what that's like. And then they say, and I don't even want to, which could be seen as quite a brutal thing to say. But it's just an honest admission of, this is almost too much for me to take on. And then I also think Barry, not Gary. Why did I call you Gary then?
Barry White. We have had this discussion.
Gary Barlow. I think there's a bit of survivor guilt as well.
Yeah.
You know, that comes around. Oh, okay, I'm all right in my nice little house and garden and, you know, middle class existence, and I've got, you know, plenty of food by most of the world's standards. And it's just forcing us to kind of confront the fact that, you know, other people are experiencing loss and tragedy. We might be. It's a lot for us to be taking in at the moment. And I think what you're doing here is so valuable, because it's all we can do. We can acknowledge it. There aren't solutions. We don't have to intellectualize it. We don't. One of the things that people do in grief is they sort of try to stick models over it, intellectualizations, or compare and contrast. Well, it's not as bad as this, it's not as bad as that. Actually, you know, whatever we're feeling at the moment is valid, and it's what we're feeling.
and this is a personal reflection, but I really struggle expressing sadness. It's as though it's a dirty emotion in a way, that you're not really allowed to be sad, especially when, like you say, the three of us are incredibly privileged. We know we have lovely houses, we work, all that, have lovely families. And it's like, but I can still feel sad, question mark. And I've, again, the racket emotion for me over sadness is joy. So quite often I'll express my sadness through joy. And people see the output of that joy and are very delighted, but really what's going on is me processing sadness. And I guess it's trying to talk about the fact that you can feel sad right now. It's okay.
Do you have moments though where it all kind of gets too much? Because I feel like I'm sort of operating everything's fine. It's all, I'm used to it. I'm coping with it. I'm surprised how well I'm coping with all these changes. And then I'll just have a day where it just hits me again. And I think at the moment I'm just feeling so bored with it. It's just like, oh, when is it going to end? Because it's just, every time there's the new sort of another 3 weeks, or I think Sundays are a bad day for me, because then I'm like, oh God, it's still going on. It's just never ending. And I noticed new things. Like yesterday I went out and thought, one thing I'm so missing is how vibrant London is. And I've always my favourite time of the day is always getting to Brixton, off the bus in Brixton. And there's always some madness going on in Brixton. And it's so exciting. And now it's actually the time that it reminds me of is not long ago, there was a terrorist attack in Streatham, which was at the end of my road. And I remember that it was so weird because it was so silent and there was nobody there. But that's what we've got every day now. And it's really, those things there are sudden realizations, I think, like we were saying about grief, Kim, that we're still in this and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
No. And as you were speaking, I was thinking I'm also a bit scared about them saying, okay, I heard on the news today they're going to be talking about gradually releasing this, lockdown. And I felt even a bit scared about that, because in this really short time, I've become used to the certainty of just being here in the house. So it's just massive, the complexity of feelings that we're trying to juggle all the time. And I keep noticing people saying to me, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? What's wrong with you? You're a human being.
Yeah.
That's what's wrong with us.
We asked a question on our poll, and I think it's a nice one to sort of come to a close. It'd be good to get your thoughts on it, Kim, which was, have you discovered more potential? No, sorry, that's a lie. It was, have you been able to take some useful meaning from this period of change? And 89% of people have said yes. And I know that you've spoken before about creating meaning through grief. And just wondered whether you would say a few more words about that.
Yeah, so first of all, I wanted to say that I think people have to find that meaning for themselves. That's what I want to say to all coaches and personal development professionals that are out there. It's not, we can't find people's silver lining. And I think only in uncertainty are you forced to think about how do I, what makes my life meaningful, actually. I'm noticing some of my coaching clients who I'm working with online still, some of our friends, myself, we are all really quickly getting perspective on what actually matters. I'm hearing a lot of people saying, you know what? I don't know that I want to commute for 3 hours a day anymore. I don't know that I need, one thing, if I think my lovely friend Alicia is listening to this, and she would be horrified to hear me say this. I looked in my wardrobe and thought, you know what? I need to never buy any more clothes.
Sacrilege. Just deleting your number now, Kim.
Right now, that's how I'm feeling. So, choosing uncertainty rather than letting it choose us, just embracing uncertainty really means that we have to start thinking what our purpose is, and what matters to us, and what meaning is for us. And we're all doing that without knowing it really, but it's kind of coming to the surface bit by bit. Do you think?
I think the way I put it is that we cleared out one of the cupboards the other day in the kitchen. One of those, like the larger cupboard where there's rice from 2003 in there that just needs to go. So we cleared it all out. And then there was this notion of this empty cupboard that was a bit disgusting when we'd kind of taken the things, sugar had leaked everywhere and all that. And we cleaned it all. And then we had this choice of what we put back in. And it feels like that's kind of where we're getting to, that we had this life that we had packed full of stuff that we felt that we needed. And we took it all out. And now we're going through this process of, do we still want this? Are we going to use this? Yeah, maybe not.
But by the way, Barry, I've been cooking with rice from 2003. I don't know what that means metaphorically in terms of what we're talking about.
Answers on a postcard, because I think we could talk forever. In fact, we often do. And so one thing that's come out of this for me is that I want to talk to you more, because I love these conversations. But we've said that we keep it to half an hour because the internet's inundated with stuff at the minute, and we want to just keep it short and sweet. But yeah, so just in terms of wrapping up, it's useful, I guess, for us just to leave with a thought, a lasting thing that maybe has come out of today. I think I'll go first, if that's all right, just because there's something that's come up for me, and that is to get alongside loss in a way that can be quite artistic or spiritual. A lot of art and music has loss within it, and grief and sadness, and just to get alongside that in any way you can. For me, it's the fire pit. It can be something as bizarre as that, just to start preparing us for what this life is really about. I think that would be mine. Up to you guys.
I go next, Kim. I'll leave Kim for the final word. I think for me, there's just a big thing about realizing that grief is unique, and that we're all losing. We've all got huge losses at this time. So I think making time to work out what it is that you've lost, and not to be afraid of going there, because I think it helps to diminish some anxiety when you can really name what it is that you have lost and what you're feeling.
Lovely.
They're both beautiful reflections. I want to use somebody else's words. I found a quote, I've written about it, but I think it says it all for these times. And it's a quote by someone called Adrienne Rich, and I'm reading it. There must be those among whom we can sit down and weep and still be counted as warriors.
She pulled it out of the bag, and the last minute she did it. That is beautiful. But still be warriors. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Profound. And again, I guess that says something about the point of get alongside art, get alongside poetry, read around. Don't get off the usual reading list. Use this time to read around. We had loads of comments and questions in today, Kim, and of course we did, because everybody wants to say. And I just wondered, Polly's kind of had her eye on them. Was there anything that's useful to be said?
Well, there are just loads of really useful things. Joe just said Eckhart Tolle. So Eckhart Tolle has amazing things at times like this to just absorb. Katie's here saying that you make her chuckle. Alicia said that Kim was right. We need to enjoy what we have. And then she's also said, wear clothes that make you feel good. It's so important, but right now, everything you can to feel good. And Claire O'Sullivan is a key worker, and she's still working, but living apart from her loved ones to keep them safe. People are kind, and then she has a little cry. Zoom has been amazing, and every time she speaks to her 5-generation family, she tells them how much she loves them, and that helps. Any tips appreciated. Claire, you're welcome to contact me independently afterwards if you need some tips. I'd love to help you. And Mariana, loved your quote, Kim.
Well, look, I just want to say thank you so much to Kim, who is so busy and made some time for us this morning amongst the building work and the GIMPs, and sharing her wisdom and generosity of spirit. And I really, really loved today. I think I'm glad that we handled a difficult topic with you and shared in your experience. We are back again next week. I can't remember who it is, but it will be in the email because I'm all a little bit emosh. But yeah, Kim, I just want to say another thank you to you, and for all that you've done at Barefoot and continuing to do at Barefoot, and as you say, somersaulting through this period of change. I'm sure you'll come out bigger and better the other side, as you always do. And we'll see you all next week. Bye!
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.